Miller, thank you kindly for joining us. We appreciate you watching the I Love CVille Network. We have a Charlottesville, Albemarle County, Central Virginia, Commonwealth Country, and worldwide audience here. Our studio's in downtown Charlottesville. I don't know, maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles from where a mass shooting took place. At a school and university I attended, loved dearly, in a community that I'm active within and love dearly. A lot we're going to cover on today's show. We're going to ask questions. Yesterday on this network, we spent 2.5 hours reporting as many facts as possible. And one of the things I did yesterday was stick with facts reported by media outlets, because there was a lot of speculation and hearsay and talk on the social platforms. And in today's digital and mobile culture, news and speculation travel faster than actual facts. Today we're going to highlight Chris Darnell Jones Jr., who's the killer. We're going to discuss his background and ask questions like motive, ask questions about his past, including a gun conviction from 2021, ask questions about conversations he had earlier this semester in September of this year, where he mentioned he had a gun on his person. We're going to ask the question, how was this man still enrolled in the school? Did he have the gun on him? It certainly appears while riding a school bus and doing a field trip to Washington, D.C. to watch a play with classmates. One local outlet, Sports Illustrated, had a story released today, which was shared with me by a friend of the show and a viewer and listener of the show, Brian Yeagle. Man, I have a lot of respect for. And in this Sports Illustrated article, which was published 13 hours ago, the article quotes a close family friend. And the close family friend is named Gordon McKernan. And Gordon McKernan is an attorney from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Gordon McKernan, the attorney, his son played high school football with Mike Hollins. Mike Hollins is one of the football players that was shot on Sunday evening. Mike Hollins is in critical condition, fighting for his life. But all accounts so far indicate he will recover from the shots, and survive. Lavelle Davis, Devin Chandler, and Deshaun Perry, they did not survive. They've since died. Gordon McKernan, the attorney from Baton Rouge, his son played high school football with Mike Hollins, who's fighting for his life. McKernan, his law firm, also employs Mike Hollins' mother. And this attorney, Gordon McKernan, has now been asked by the Mike Hollins family to be a spokesman for the family, as the family is bedside and hospital side praying for Mike Hollins, who's in and out of surgeries and fighting for his life. Why I'm bringing up Gordon McKernan in this Sports Illustrated article is because of a few aspects of the story that I have not found in many of the media outlets that I have read. I'm going to read verbatim from this Sports Illustrated article that was published 13 hours ago. I'm going to quote the attorney, and I'm going to stick to facts throughout this entire show. I'm not going to utilize speculation, hearsay, sources, or anything that's percolating on social media, and strictly instead, I'm going to stick to media outlet reported facts, which I will pass along to you, the viewer and listener. Here's something I found unnerving from the Sports Illustrated article. And I'm going to read directly from the article here. In fact, the article is quoting the attorney Gordon McKernan, the spokesman for the Mike Hollins family. Quote, "They had been on a field trip to see a play in Washington, D.C. And when they came home on a bus, they pulled into the parking garage. The suspect, who apparently may not have been a part of the class, but was on the trip, he was asking one of the football players about a video game. The guy answered, and at that moment he pulled a gun and started shooting. The belief from those on board was that he was targeting football players." End quote. My first question I have for you, the viewers and listeners, for those that listen to the show, watch the show. Why was Chris Darnell Jones, the murderer, on this charter bus to Washington, D.C., if he may or may not have been part of the class that was heading to D.C. to see the play? That's a fair question. I have a second question for you. Perhaps you guys are asking yourselves these questions as well. Chris Darnell Jones, in February 2021, was convicted of a gun charge. Now, Jones, convicted of a misdemeanor concealed weapons violation, he received a 12-month suspended sentence and a fine. Jones never reported this to the University of Virginia. Here's a follow-up question I have for you. Are there, in today's digitally sophisticated era, are there not methodologies or a process in place to review criminal behavior with students at the start of each semester? Just asking a question. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just asking questions out loud. If a student in February of 2021 was convicted of a misdemeanor concealed weapons violation and received a 12-month suspended sentence, how did the university not know about this conviction? Why does the university rely upon the student to report convictions like this to the authorities at the university? Fair question. Not throwing shade, not pointing fingers, just asking questions out loud. Here's another question I have, viewers and listeners. In September of this year, so a couple of months ago, we're talking 2 months ago, the killer made comments about possessing a gun on grounds. Chief Tim Longo, who I have a lot of respect for, Longo a pros pro. Chief Tim Longo, a pros pro. I respected his transparency in yesterday's press conference where he said, "You need to hear this from me first." And he then indicated that the killer, Mr. Jones, alleged killer, Mr. Jones, had the gun conviction last year and also was rumored to have a gun on his person as early as a couple of months ago. In fact, a third party not affiliated with the university, according to Longo, reported to authorities that Jones had a gun on his person and was commenting about possessing a gun. Here's another question I have. The University of Virginia is a gun-free zone. A gun-free zone. A proclaimed gun-free zone. If 2 months ago a student is commenting about possessing a gun, and then when investigating the comment, you realize the same student has a gun conviction from February of 2021, why does it take months, 2 months, 60 days before any real ramifications take place, happen? Is that red tape? Is that the bureaucratic nature of discipline at universities? If a student you know is convicted of a gun charge in February of 2021, and that same student is commenting about having a gun on his person in September of 2022, those strike me as red flags. And those strike me as the impetus or influence to expedite discipline, perhaps suspension, perhaps expulsion, certainly a limitation of some kind of university freedom. So these are questions that I'm wondering. Question I'm wondering first: what are the processes or methodologies or procedures for convictions like gun charge convictions, gun possession convictions, getting immediately to the university? Does the university track its students from a criminal conviction standpoint? I also have this question. Should the authorities who arrested, charged, and convicted the student, the killer, the alleged killer, with a gun possession charge and conviction, are the authorities responsible for reporting this conviction to the University of Virginia? As Julian Freeman puts in the feed here, the authorities need to report this, zero question. It's not like he stole a pack of gum. He had a gun charge. Charge and conviction, Julian. Great comment right there. I feel the same. Should jurisdictional authorities where convictions of this magnitude transpire, should those jurisdictional authorities be reporting to universities that these kinds of convictions happen? It's a fair question. Here's another fair question. What kind of procedures does the University of Virginia have to track criminal convictions, especially ones of gun magnitudes, on a regular basis? Are we to believe that the university found out about this gun conviction from February 2021? And ladies and gentlemen, if you read the article on ESPN.com, it's on ESPN.com's front page right now. I'll read the sentence from the article. It's right in front of me here. The university later learned that Jones had been charged with misdemeanor concealed weapons charges outside Charlottesville in February of 2021. So it's not like this conviction happened across the country. ESPN.com is reporting that the charges happened outside Charlottesville, the home of the University of Virginia, over a year ago. So are we to believe that the University of Virginia first found out about this gun conviction in September of this year because a third party reported to the university that this man was talking about possessing a gun? Is that what we are being told? That the University of Virginia first found out about this gun conviction, a gun conviction from 2021 February, a gun conviction from 2021 February outside Charlottesville, according to ESPN.com. I'm looking at the article right now. Are we to believe that the University of Virginia first found out about this gun conviction in September of this year when a third party reported to the university that this man was commenting about possessing a gun on grounds? Because if that's the case, that's I choose my words carefully here. Because if that's the case, that is as disappointing, beyond concerning, undoubtedly red flags, and if you're the family of those that have perished, something you ask later in life through potentially an attorney: how did you protect our son's safety? Son's safety. I have more questions for you. I encourage you guys to read the article from Sports Illustrated. Brian Yeagle, thank you for sending this to me. The article is titled, here's the title of the article so you can research it and read it yourself. Virginia running back Mike Hollins in critical condition after Charlottesville shooting. In this article, which was written by Ross Dellinger and published 13 hours ago, the spokesman for the Mike Hollins family, this is the running back who's in critical condition. He's an attorney. He's a lawyer, a man who speaks for a living, and a man who chooses his words carefully for a living. That's his profession. And this attorney, the spokesman for the family, makes the comment, and it's in quotes in the Sports Illustrated article, quote, they had been on a field trip to see a play in Washington, D.C., and when they came home on a bus, they pulled into a parking garage. The suspect, who apparently may not have been part of the class but was on the trip, he was asking one of the football players about a video. Explain to me how the suspect, the alleged murderer, may have not been part of the class, yet was on the bus to D.C. to see the play. Do you have that question? I wonder that question. Another question. If there's a student at the University of Virginia who's got a gun conviction in February of last year, and there's a student at the University of Virginia who's talking about having a gun on September of this year, should we be monitoring that student closer when he's getting on chartered buses and going outside the Commonwealth in a much more unsupervised capacity? I would think yes. He has a gun. Are we not to believe, and isn't it not logical to think that the student, the alleged murderer, had the gun on his person while riding the bus? Right? Now, I have another story to relay to you. This one is from CBS 6. It's the CBS affiliate in Richmond, Virginia, and they've done a fantastic job of covering this story. And this CBS affiliate interviewed the alleged murderer's father. And I'm going to read verbatim from the media, verbatim from the TV station website. And everything I'm relaying to you, viewers and listeners, is based on coverage in established, credible media outlets. Nothing relayed to you that is hearsay, rumor, speculation, nothing percolating on social media. It's literally from media outlets, what I've relayed to you. What I relayed to you yesterday. This is from CBS 6. They interviewed his father, Chris Jones Sr. Chris Jones Sr. has been in and out of his son's life. His son grew up with his mom working the graveyard shift. The alleged murderer and his mom grew up poor. There's an article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, which I read in preparing for this show, that talked about the alleged murderer spending a lot of time by himself because his mom was working the graveyard night shift. He would routinely walk to a convenience store after school for dinner, where he would purchase ramen on most evenings for dinner, ramen noodles. According to the Richmond Times-Dispatch, the alleged murderer, when he was a child, when he was in middle school, he would enjoy Roscoe fried chicken, synonymous with, say, KFC or Bojangles, when he wanted to splurge or when the family had a little bit extra money for a fancier dinner, if you may, as opposed to the traditional meals of ramen and or cereal for dinner. So the alleged murderer, difficult upbringing, a father in and out of his life in a violent, crime-ridden neighborhood. The Southside Richmond, Petersburg area is violent. It's a violent area. It's a violent area. Do the research your own. Many of you know this already. To say his upbringing, the alleged murderer's upbringing, was pleasant or easy is far from accurate. It was challenging. It was arduous. It was on the poverty line. It lacked parental supervision. Still, the alleged murderer was able to utilize athletics and his brain. We're talking a National Honors Society student, a talented football player, and a man who had overcome significant odds that many do not overcome to earn acceptance into one of the most prestigious universities in the country. His football talents did not translate into playing time at UVA. 5'9", 195 pounds, a running back when he entered the University of Virginia as a walk-on, And in 2018, he did not play any games. So he started in 2018. You have the 2018 as a first year, 2019 as a second year, 2020 as a third year, 18 first year, 19 second year, 2020 as a third year, 2021 as a fourth year. So here is a student in Chris Darnell Jones who is past the traditional 4-year window of undergraduate college, now in a 5th year. Remember that when I get back to hazing. Hazing in a matter of minutes. CBS 6 News, WTVR in Richmond, interviewed Chris Jones Sr. Chris Jones Sr. apologized for his son, and then he had some very how do I put this? He had some things to say that had me asking questions. And I'm going to read directly from the media outlet, CBS 6. The father said, quote, "My son was real paranoid when I talked to him about some things. He would not tell me everything. He said some people were picking on him or whatever. He did not know how to handle it. I just told him to go to school, don't pay them no mind, do what you got to do. You only got 1 more year to go." The father is saying, it's also on CNN.com, that the son was being picked on, insinuating bullying. University Police Department Chief Tim Longo utilized the word hazing in yesterday's press conference. Hazing. You got a alleged killer whose father is telling the media that his son was bullied and picked on. And you got a police chief who utilized a very descriptive term in a press conference, and that term was hazing. Naturally, as human beings, we ask this question: did the murder of 3 football players, was it motive by bullying and or hazing? When you hear that question, I want to consider timelines. The alleged murderer, Chris Jones, was a walk-on the football team in 2018. Jim Ryan said, the president of the University of Virginia, Jim Ryan, said the walk-on was on the football team for a year in yesterday's press conference. After that, he was not a part of the team. This is what I don't understand. How could Chris Jones, the alleged murderer, continue to be hazed if he was on the football team for all of 1 year, 2018 to 2019? Did that hazing and bullying continue into 2022? Furthermore, The players who were murdered: Lavelle Davis, a third-year junior; Devin Chandler, a junior. Devin Chandler just transferred to UVA from Wisconsin Badgers. He just transferred to this school from another school all the way across the country. Chandler's from North Carolina. Lavelle Davis is from South Carolina. Deshaun Perry, the junior defensive end linebacker's from Miami. Lavelle Davis, Devin Chandler, and Deshaun Perry, they are considerably younger than the alleged murderer. If this was in fact a mass murder motivated by hazing and bullying, the timeline seems off to me. The alleged murderer was only on the football team 2018 to 2019. Lavelle Davis, Devin Chandler, and Deshaun Perry would not really have crossed paths with the alleged murderer in a locker room setting. How did the bullying, the word hazing was used by the police chief, by Longo, where and how did it transpire? If this was in fact the motive for the mass murder, how did it take place? The timeline doesn't add up. Questions I have in the many media accounts that I've read. Nothing based on speculation, social media chatter, gossip, anything like that. Now, I think we have other questions we have to ask. Should the football season be canceled? There's 2 games left. You got a team that's struggled. And whether we want to admit this or not, and this is the world we live in, and this is tough, but this is the world we live in. It's a performance-driven world in a 24/7 news cycle. The current football team is horrendous. They have no bowl eligibility opportunity. Even if they win the remaining 2 games, they finish with 5 total wins. In the last game against Pittsburgh, as the team was running to the locker room, the team was legitimately booed by stands that were barely half full. Demoralizing to see a team that you love. Forget a team that you love. Demoralizing to see teenagers and early 20s who get paid nothing booed by fans. It's not like pro sports. They're not getting paid millions of dollars. It's not what they do for a living. It's what helped get them into college. But they were booed. You got 2 games left, Coastal Carolina, and then arch rival Virginia Tech and Blacksburg. Should they forfeit the remaining 2 games and cancel the season? It's a fair question, and it's a question that should be asked. Here's another question that should be asked. If this team if this football team was 7-3 instead of 3-7. Their overall record is 3-7 right now. Let's say they were 7-3 overall. Their ACC record is 1-6 currently. Let's say it was 6-1. Let's just hypothetical. Let's say this team was 7-3 overall and 6-1 in conference play. Would this team have completed and played the last 2 games of the year? My bet is yes. Because when you're bowl eligible, heck, it would be 3 games because they would play in a bowl game after the Virginia Tech contest to close the season. When you're bowl eligible, you have millions and millions and millions of dollars coming to the program. But when you're not bowl eligible, you don't have the revenue, incremental, for the program. So I asked the question, first one, should the rest of the season be canceled? My take is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes, it should be canceled. The second question I ask, should the rest of the season be played? Should that decision be a player's decision to make? My take on that is absolutely no. This is not a player's decision to make. In very similar circumstances to injuries, when you ask a player, can you get back in the game, the player feels a sense of bravado, a sense of loyalty to get back on the playing field, the court, the pitch, the mat, whatever sport you're playing. That's why trainers and coaches make decisions for injured players for fear of long-term damage to health. The coaches and the doctors and the trainers assess the moment and say, you are risking a head injury or a knee injury or a back injury that could cripple you or impact your quality of life forever. No, you cannot play. That's what trainers and doctors and coaches do. Here we have a mass murder and another injured player fighting for his life in the hospital from gunshot wounds. Asking the players, should we play? Is out of touch with current events and out of touch with what's best for a grieving program. And the last question I ask on this topic about the football season is this one. If this team had a 7-3 overall record instead of a 3-7 overall record, would they have played the last 2 games? Unfortunately, money would have driven the decision, and it would probably have been yes. Now let's talk about Charlottesville. And let's talk about this community. And let's talk about Albemarle County and Central Virginia. Let's talk about the national media, the global media. Let's talk about grieving. Let's talk about being in this predicament again. How many of you have made this comment? I know I have, and this is the comment. August 12th, 2017. That happened here. Hannah Graham. That happened here. Morgan Harrington. That happened here. Yardley Love. That happened here. Heather Heyer. That happened here. The murder on the downtown mall outside of a local restaurant, a month and a half ago? That happened here. A gunshot battle synonymous with the OK Corral, that happened in the Omni Hotel parking lot. That happened here. How many of us, how many of you, how many of all of us are saying, what's going on? Why is this always happening in Charlottesville and this area? Is it unique to this community? Why does this happen to us? Why can we not stay out of the national media? I've been trying to make some sense of those questions. And this is kind of what I, determine. The large majority of activity that I just outlined is not unique to Charlottesville. It's not unique to this community we love. It happens everywhere. Do Nazi rallies and lit torches happen everywhere? No, they do not. The August 12, 2017 Nazi rally and what I truly believe was domestic terrorism, with Fields ramming a crowd of people leading to Heather Heyer's murder. That is unique in a lot of ways to Charlottesville. But a murder on the downtown mall, that's not unique to Charlottesville. Morgan Harrington and Heather Graham's murder at the hands of Jesse Matthews, a serial killer, that's not unique to Charlottesville. There are Jesse Matthew serial killers in other markets, communities, jurisdictions. That's not unique to Charlottesville. And I hate to say this, and it's such an indictment on the world we live in today. Mass shootings at schools are not unique to Charlottesville. So why does the national news love to prey on CVille? Why is the New York Times manipulating this mass murder? I'm going to read the headline to you. Looking it up. The New York Times compared the UVA mass murder. This is the world's newspaper. And it linked the UVA shooting from Sunday evening to August 12, 2017. The New York Times has become unrecognizable in its reporting. Here's what the Times wrote. The shooting, and I'm quoting, the shooting at the University of Virginia on Sunday, in which 3 people were killed, stirred memories of other violent episodes at the school and in the city of Charlottesville, Virginia in recent years. Then it continued to make comparisons of the mass shooting from Sunday evening to the Unite the Right A12 rally on the downtown mall and around Charlottesville City, including photos of tiki-carrying, Confederate flag-wearing, waving Nazis. That is the worst kind of clickbait, the worst kind of media manipulation, and unfortunately something that damages the image that is the community we love, because it's the world's paper. You've heard this phrase before, I bet, and this is the phrase: Charlottesville is not an event, Charlottesville is a place. I'll add to it. Charlottesville is not for media manipulation. Charlottesville is a place of people who love. Do we have issues? Yeah, we have issues. Every place has issues. Everywhere does. Do we have affordability issues? Yeah, we have affordability issues. Is the community undoubtedly becoming wealthy and homogenous? Yeah. Have you walked around it? It's about as siloed when it comes to its race and socioeconomic status as Greenwich, Connecticut. Is it becoming the Silicon Valley of the East Coast? Sure looks like it to me. Are these socioeconomic, racial homogeneity dynamics going to perpetrate or worsen or become more robust? Absolutely. Absolutely. Can any of the affordability measures that jurisdictions are trying to employ, will they have any kind of lasting impact or true influence? No, they won't. Jurisdictions, government officials have a very difficult time beating the invisible hand that we call the free market and capitalism. It operates at levels and speeds that jurisdictions that drown in red tape will never be able to keep up with. You're not going to beat the free market. You won't beat the invisible hand. Just like athletes. You know what's going to beat LeBron James? You know what's going to beat Tom Brady? You know what beat Michael Jordan? You know what beat Michael Jordan? It wasn't Charles Barkley or Patrick Ewing or Hakeem Olajuwon or Tim Duncan or David Robinson. You know what's going to beat LeBron James? LeBron James is not going to be beat by Kevin Durant or Jason Tatum or Kawhi Leonard. Tom Brady's not going to be beat by Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers. You know who beats those guys? Father Time. Father Time beats those guys. The only undefeated entity or team in sports is Father Time's team. The only entity undefeated in this capitalistic society we live upon and live within is the invisible hand that's called the free market. Yes, it's going to get more homogenous and more wealthy. Yes, the middle class is getting pinched. Yes, the lower class is being driven outside the community. And yes, Charlottesville and Albemarle County are becoming playgrounds for white wealthy transplants in a lot of ways. But that's not unique to Charlottesville. That is not unique to Charlottesville. And outside of A12, August 11th as well. I mean, how many communities in August 11th had Nazis carrying lit tiki torches walking around town? Not many. Sure, there's some out there, but they're not many. And A12, that's unique to Charlottesville. But the other crime, don't let global and national media brand us as the second coming to St. Louis or New Orleans or Richmond from 20 years ago, where it became murder capital central. And that's what some are trying to do. I saw one journalist, and I won't utilize his name, make the comment that if you extrapolate the murders that have happened in Charlottesville over a 12-month period of time, the Charlottesville metro area has a murder rate approximately equivalent to St. Louis. You know what my response to that is? These numbers go up and down. There were no homicides in Charlottesville last year. And over the last generation, you can count on one hand the amount of homicides have been in this area. Has there been a little smattering? Has there been a smattering? And is it concerning? Yes. But it's not indicative of the community in totality. And don't let anyone brand us that way. Tuesday edition of the I Love CVille Show. I'd be remiss not to... Do you want to add anything, Judah? You good? Judah's the director of the show. We asked a lot of questions, and I'll conclude like this. I'm going to ask the University of Virginia the following questions. What kind of methodologies do you have in place to get criminal convictions on your radar in a much quicker and swifter capacity? It's the first question. The second question I'm going to ask, should jurisdictions that convict college students of crimes, should they report those crimes to the universities they attend? The third question I'm going to ask, if this student in September of this year told a third party that he possessed a gun on grounds, and that third party reported it to the University of Virginia, why did it take a couple of months for any kind of action to transpire? The fourth question I'm going to ask the University of Virginia. If you knew a student in February of 2021 was convicted of a gun crime, and you found out about that gun crime conviction probably in September of this year when a third party reported to you that he has a gun on his person, or he's talking about having a gun on his person, why did you not red flag the student immediately? Where there's smoke, there's fire. And two incidences, the one in February of last year and talking about a gun this year, is fire. I have another question when it regards to hazing. Longo used the term hazing, and the alleged killer's father talked about his son being bullied to the point of paranoia. Where did that bullying and hazing take place if the alleged killer his timeline was very different than those of the athletes he murdered. I also asked the question about the season and should it be canceled. I say yes. I asked the question if it's the player's decision whether they should play or not. I say absolutely it is not the player's decision. Just like we do not allow a player to determine whether or not he can get back into a football game when it comes to injury. It should not be the decision of the player to determine whether or not this season should transpire. And the last thing, and I hate to even bring it up, but that's the world we live in. If this team had a winning record and there were 2 games left on the season, I bet you the administration would say, yes, let's continue playing these 2 football games and the bowl game because millions of dollars are on the line. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, there's no money on the line now because the team is not good. They have a 3-7 record. The stadium is empty, and they have no bowl game on the horizon. Those are the questions I have. That's the Tuesday edition of the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you for joining us.